Look for Me There from journalist Luke Russert. It's an exploration of finding oneself and one's place in the world in the face of crushing expectations and grief. And today I have Luke Russert. Good morning, Luke. How are you?
Good morning, James. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend. So let's talk about the book. Look for Me There. Tell us exactly what it's about. We got a little bit, but tell us a little bit more.
Well, it's a journey of self-discovery, and it's a deeply internal journey that happens over many physical external places. And I basically talk about losing my father 15 years ago and the emotions that I went through and how I stored and ignored a lot of those and threw myself into a job of really trying to maintain his legacy at NBC News. And how after doing that for 8 years, felt unfulfilled, that I wasn't really sure who I was, independent of the job, independent of him, independent of the Washington bubble I grew up in. So I decided to travel, and through the process of traveling, which was only supposed to be about 6 months, it ended up being 3 years, I realized that I was doing two things, is that I was looking for something, and that's who I was, independent of him in my name, but I was also running away from something, and that was grief. Because I had never fully grieved him, because I felt if I did, then he would really be gone. So it's a story about those two themes, a lot of fun travel narrative in there, so it's not all doom and gloom. So I make you laugh, I make you cry, and I hope you leave a little less lost after reading it.
Okay. On your journey that you took, when you found yourself, what was the revelation?
I had a very impactful moment that I catalog at the end of the book in the Holy Land. And what I ended up doing was I was going to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is Christ's tomb. And it was there that I had a very powerful revelation. I won't spoil it for you, you can read it in the book. But essentially I got to a headspace where I realized something that I think is very important, which is that our lost loved ones, especially those who we were so close to, the last thing they would ever want for us is to be so full of pain and anguish about their passing. They would want us to live the best version of our own lives. And I got to that place through a lot of meditative thought and prayer and self-introspection, but it revealed itself in the Holy Land, which I thought was very fitting.
So when was the last time, or when did you finally grieve for your father and let it go?
That's a great question. I think it was a journey. I think there was bits and pieces along the way. One of the things I write about in the book is the sign of rainbows. So when my father passed away, I gave his eulogy at the Kennedy Center, the public one that was on television, and we played a song called Somewhere Over the Rainbow for when people were processing out, because that was one of his favorite songs. And lo and behold, after that service, we were having a reception out on the balcony of the Kennedy Center, and there was this beautiful rainbow that went over Washington, D.C. So that was a sign from him, and I started to look for those signs as I traveled, and I saw a lot of rainbows, sometimes during days that were difficult for me. And that sort of opened me up to thinking, all right, this is something you should tap into and be aware of. So I think it was a journey, it was a process, but ultimately it ended up in the Holy Land, as I mentioned, that I got to a place of peace, that I miss my dad, I love my dad, and I wish he was here. But I understand that we'll see each other again someday, and to carry on his lessons and live the best I can.
What do you want your readers to get out of Look for Me There?
I think a lot of people go through loss and they become trapped, whether it's a cycle of store and ignore, not wanting to deal with the pain, or they feel they have to live up to an expectation of their lost loved one, or they have to take on different roles within their family structure. And that's all true. I think a lot of people may be in a job that they think is what they should be doing, but not necessarily feel totally connected and all there, and that could be true. I think one of the things that I try to write about is that there's a lot of people having these feelings. They're universal. And one of the things that we can do to better ourselves is really take a moment to disconnect and think. And it sounds so basic, but oftentimes in this world that we live in, it's so interconnected, where we're constantly on the hamster wheel, where there's not really an opportunity to check out and just process these thoughts in your head. It's a very important exercise to do. So I want people to sort of know that there's a lot of folks who are thinking like this. The response I've gotten from the book has been incredible. But also take a moment for yourself and think. It's okay to take a minute. You know, not everything comes right away. And don't be afraid to breathe. And hopefully after you do those things, it sounds so basic, but you think about it and you sit in it for a little bit, you'll feel a little less lost.
I like that. Been speaking with Luke Russert. We've been talking about his book, Look for Me There. One last question. Where can our viewers get the book?
Wherever books are sold, you can go to your main outlets online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. We're in a bunch of independent bookstores as well. And of course, there's HarperCollinsFocus.com, which is from the publisher. But we're out there, and it's on ebook and Audible. I narrated the Audible myself. All those years narrating news stories came to fruition by narrating the 10 hours it took to read the book.
I like that. Luke, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Blend.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it.